There are 7 rules that people who live in the Ozark Mountains follow without question. They don't talk about them with outsiders. They don't write them down. They just know. And last October 14th, on a trail just south of Devil's Backbone in Stone County, Arkansas, I broke one of them. What followed me home is the reason I'm making this video. But before I tell you which rule I broke, you need to understand what's out there. Because something watches the Ozarks. And it has rules. The Ozark Mountains stretch across 4 states: Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and a sliver of Kansas. Over 47,000 square miles of limestone bluffs, dense hardwood forest, and hollows so deep that sunlight doesn't reach the bottom until noon. People have lived in these mountains for over 10,000 years. The Osage called certain valleys places where the earth listens. French fur trappers in the 1700s marked specific hollows on their maps with a single word: éviter, avoid. But here's what makes the Ozarks different from, say, Appalachia or the Pacific Northwest. The people who settled these mountains, mostly Scots-Irish families in the early 1800s, they didn't just bring their folklore with them. They adapted it. They found things in these woods that their old stories didn't have names for. So they made new rules. Rules that, if you're smart, you follow to the letter. And look, I know how this sounds. I know it sounds like campfire nonsense. I thought the same thing, right up until I didn't. Rule number 1. Never whistle after dark in the Ozarks. Now, you might have heard some version of this. Don't whistle at night, it calls something. That's the sanitized version. The one locals actually tell goes like this. Whistling after sundown mimics a specific frequency. Not a human frequency. Something that moves through the hollows between dusk and dawn. Something that communicates with a sound almost identical to a human whistle. Mabel Cartwright. She was a folklorist working out of the University of Arkansas in the 1970s. She collected over 200 accounts from families in Madison, Newton, and Stone counties. Families that had been in those mountains since before the Civil War. And nearly every single one had the same warning. You do not whistle past sundown. Because when you do, something whistles back. But here's the part that got me. In 43 of those accounts, people described what happened when someone answered the whistle back. And they all said the same thing. The whistle gets closer, but it doesn't come from one direction. It circles. Like whatever's making the sound is orbiting you in the dark, getting tighter, closer, until it's right behind your left ear.
One woman, name withheld in Cartwright's notes, she said her brother whistled back on a dare in the fall of 1962, near a place called Lost Creek. He said the whistle answered from maybe 200 yards out. He whistled again. He answered from 50 yards. He laughed and did it a third time.
It answered from directly behind him. He ran made it home, locked the door, and for the next 3 nights, something whistled outside his bedroom window at exactly 2:40 a.m. On the 4th night, it stopped. He never spoke about it again. Sold the property 6 months later. Now, rule 2, and this one is older, maybe the oldest one. Certain hollows in the Ozarks have what locals call a watcher. Not a person, not an animal. Something that occupies a specific piece of geography, like a spider occupies a web. You'll know you've entered a watched hollow because the birds go silent. Not quiet, silent. And you'll feel observed. Not like someone's behind you, like the air itself is paying attention to you. Here's where it gets weird. People who've described this feeling, hunters, hikers, even a few Forest Service rangers off the record, they all mention the same physical sensation. Pressure behind the eyes. Like your skull is being gently squeezed from the inside. And the moment you turn around to leave, the pressure stops. Like it was just waiting for you to make that decision. Rule 3. Never accept food from a stranger you meet on a trail in the Ozarks. Now, this isn't about poison. It's not about drugging. The tradition goes back to at least the 1830s, when the first wave of Scots-Irish settlers carved paths through the Ozark Mountains. The belief is specific. If something in these woods wants to follow you home, it needs permission. And accepting food, eating what it offers, that's how you give it. There's a story that Vance Randolph collected. He was the godfather of Ozark folklore, spent decades documenting it firsthand. About a man near Norfolk Lake in 1911 who met a woman on a trail. Middle-aged, plain dress. She was carrying a basket and offered him a piece of cornbread. He said it smelled incredible. Best thing he'd ever smelled. He ate it. That night, he woke up to the sound of footsteps in his cabin. Not outside, inside. Walking from the front door to the foot of his bed and back again. Every night for 11 nights. On the 12th, his wife found him standing at the tree line at 4 a.m., facing the woods, completely unresponsive. He had no memory of getting out of bed. The locals told him he'd been claimed, that the woman on the trail wasn't a woman, and the only reason it eventually let him go, his wife had nailed a sprig of red cedar above every doorframe in the house. Red cedar. That's the one thing, according to Ozark tradition, that whatever lives in those hollows cannot cross. But here's what nobody talks about. I went looking for that Randolph account. I found it in the Special Collections Archive at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. But there was a footnote, a handwritten footnote in the margin of his original field notes. It read, "Subject returned to trail, April 1912. Woman seen again. Subject followed her. Subject not recovered."
Let that sit for a second. The man went back. He went back to the trail, saw the same thing that had tormented him for nearly 2 weeks, and he followed it, willingly, into the woods, and was never seen again. That's not a ghost story. That's a trap. And whatever said it was patient enough to wait 5 months for him to come back. And look, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to tell you what people in these mountains have believed for 2 centuries. And they believe it because they've seen what happens when the rules get broken. Rule 4. This one scares me the most. If you're near water in the Ozarks, a creek, a spring, a lake, and you hear someone call your name, do not look at the water. Do not look down. Do not approach the edge. The tradition says that certain bodies of water in the Ozarks hold something beneath the surface. Not a creature exactly. More like a presence that can mimic. It learns your voice. It learns the voices of people you trust, people you love, and it calls to you using them. Your mother's voice, your best friend's voice, your own voice. And if you look down into the water when it calls your name, it sees your face. And once it has your face,
it can wear it. There are at least 4 documented cases in Newton County between 1887 and 1934, where individuals claim to have seen themselves standing at the opposite bank of a creek. Themselves. Same clothes, same posture, but the face was wrong. The smile was too wide, or the eyes didn't blink. In every case, the person had previously looked into the water after hearing their name. Here's a detail from one of those accounts that I just can't shake. A farmer named Earl Prosser in 1923 said he saw his own double standing across Richland Creek. He fired his shotgun at it. The double didn't move. It just tilted its head. And then, and this is in his written testimony to the Newton County Sheriff, it opened its mouth and spoke in Earl's voice. It said, "You shouldn't have looked." One line. Then it walked backward into the tree line without ever turning around. Backward. Into the dark. So. 5 rules. No, I said 7 at the start, didn't I? Here's the thing. I've only told you 4. The 5th rule is the one I broke. And the other 2, I was asked not to share. By someone who meant it. I'll leave that alone. But the 5th rule, that one, I owe you. Rule 5. Never hike alone in the Ozarks after 3 p.m. in October. Last year, October 14th, I was on the Ozark Highlands Trail, just south of Hare Mountain in Newton County. I was documenting locations for this channel. I had a map. I had good boots. I figured I knew what I was doing. I hit the trail at 1:30 p.m. Planned to be back at my car by 4. At 3:22 p.m., the birds stopped. Not gradually, all at once. Like someone flipped a switch, and I felt it. That pressure behind the eyes. Like something was leaning against the inside of my forehead. I stopped walking. The forest was completely still. No wind, no insects, nothing. And I want to be specific about this. The quality of the light changed. It didn't get darker. It got flatter. Like the shadows lost their depth. Like I was standing inside a photograph instead of a real place. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. And then I heard it. My name. Coming from below me. Down the slope, through the trees, there was a creek. I could hear the water. And layered over the sound of the water, like a voice woven into the current, was my name, spoken clearly, in a voice I recognized. It was my mother's voice, and my mother has been dead for 6 years. I did not look down. I did not move toward the creek. I turned around, and I walked fast back the way I came. And the entire time, for maybe 12 minutes straight, I heard footsteps matching mine. Not behind me, beside me, about 30 feet to my left, moving through the underbrush, keeping exact pace. I never looked. I never turned my head. I kept my eyes on the trail, and I walked. When I reached the trailhead parking lot at 4:07 p.m., the footsteps stopped. The birds came back, like someone unpaused the world, and the pressure behind my eyes released, like someone had lifted a hand off my face. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. The rule I told you. Never hike alone after 3 p.m. in October. I got that from a man named Dale. Runs a bait shop in Ponca, Arkansas. When I told him what happened, he went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You broke 2 rules, not 1. You were near the water, and you heard your name." He looked at me real steady and said, "Did you look?" I said no. He said, "Good. Because if you had, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to me. You'd be down there, and something wearing your face would be sitting in that chair instead." I drove home that night. 6-hour drive. Got back to my apartment around 11 p.m. Everything was fine. Normal. I convinced myself I'd panicked over nothing. Some weird acoustic trick of the valley. My overactive imagination filling in the gaps. Then, 3 days later, at 2:40 a.m., I heard a whistle outside my window. I live in a 3rd-floor apartment in a city 250 miles from the Ozarks. It whistled 3 times. Then it stopped. And I need you to understand something. I didn't whistle. I never whistled out there. That wasn't my rule to break. Which means whatever followed me home, it followed me for a different reason. Or maybe, and this is the thought that won't leave, the rules aren't actually about keeping you safe. They're about keeping it contained. And when you enter those hollows, when you walk those trails, you become part of the equation. You become a door it can walk through. I haven't been back to the Ozarks. I don't plan to go back. But sometimes, and I'm going to be honest with you here, sometimes at night, right before I fall asleep, I feel it. That pressure behind my eyes. Like something is leaning in close, watching, patient, waiting for me to make one more mistake. The Ozarks have rules. Follow them. Because whatever watches those mountains doesn't forgive. And it doesn't forget. If this video disturbed you, do me a favor. Hit subscribe and that bell icon. Because the stories I'm finding, they only get darker from here. And if you want to see another story, even darker than this one, click the video on your screen right now. I'll see you in the dark.